This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
We are born into a world never knowing anything different than the abilities that we're given. With very little difficulty, children are able to run, talk, learn, and associate with those around them. Parents get to enjoy the small victories that their offspring make with very little effort. Take away a capability and the game changes. The loss of a limb may make activity a challenge. A developmental restriction may limit the ability to talk or curb learning. Change appearance, and the association with those around them may be altered. A child is a child, regardless of any special needs. Being born with limits, restrictions, or without does not make those children bring any less joy. On the contrary, they bring an added perspective to further appreciate what many may take for granted. I'm Kevin Donaldson here with Mike Failace, and on this episode of the Suffering Podcast, we sit down with Todd Smith to discuss special needs athletes. This is the first time in the history of this show that we removed the word suffering from our title, and that's because of the joy these kids bring. Todd, thanks so much for traveling all this way to come and sit with us.
Thank you for having me.
Before we get into anything, let's talk about our marquee sponsor, and that's Toyota of Hackensack. We buy our cars from Toyota because we don't trust anybody, and we know we can trust them. So go to toyotaofhackensack.com and let them find you a car. Todd, we've waited probably, what do you say, a year and a half?
At least, it's over a year.
And we've had you scheduled multiple times. You're a busy dude. So, having you in here to discuss this topic, which I know is very dear to Mike's heart, because he talks about Special Olympics constantly and his involvement and the joy that it brings him.
Well, you know what, and that's the reason I wanted Todd in here, because Todd emboldens what Special Olympics is all about. I mean, I've never met someone with a bigger heart than Todd in all of my life.
It's a tough thing, It's bitter. It's a bittersweet because athletics, to bring certain things out in children on all walks of life, there's nothing better for it. And I'm a big believer in that. And your son, what's your son's name?
Jake.
Jake. He's like Special Olympic glorified. I mean, you see Jake. I mean, he's like
the poster child.
He really is. I was going to say poster child, but I didn't think that was.
I did see one picture of Jake before you came in here, and it's you in uniform hugging him. It's a very beautiful picture.
My favorite picture ever. My favorite picture ever.
All right,
it's you hugging Jake, and we're gonna put that up.
Every week we take a question from one of our audience members. This week we get one from JoJo55, and JoJo writes, "How do words hurt?" And I thought this was an apt one for you because there is a word in the special needs community that is as volatile as any word out there. But before we talk about that word, how do you think words can affect and change people's perspective?
People that don't know athletes, I don't know, it's kind of like a stigma. I don't know if they're afraid of them or they just tend to back off a little.
Well, they just don't know.
Yeah, it's fear of the unknown. It's human nature.
Yeah.
Well, it's very easy to label something and categorize something. It just makes things fit in our minds a little bit better. And, I don't know this for certain, but I think a lot of people who misuse words do so because that's either how they grew up, and I don't know whether they do it out of meanness.
Hey, some people, it's their norm.
It's how they were taught. You were taught with different vernacular than you're allowed to use now, I'm sure.
Like I said, though, it's the fear of the unknown. If you don't know the word hurts, does it really hurt? Right. I mean, growing up as a kid, if someone called you a jerk, what does jerk really mean?
Good point.
Now that we're older, if someone calls us a different name, it's really not going to hurt us as much as it hurts when you're a child.
So one of the greatest stories is that book right there, 14th and 2nd, by Charlie Cifarelli. He's a good friend of ours, and Charlie had an addiction problem when he was younger. And my common vernacular, because of being a cop for so long, was they're junkies. Well, that's changed, all right. And I was changed by Charlie. It's like you really shouldn't be calling them junkies because they have an addiction. And as somebody who had an addiction, I had an addiction. I understand that. Like, nobody wants to be called a junkie.
No, I do too.
Yeah.
I didn't know you could be addicted to penis.
Do we make 30 seconds?
Mike, what do you think? How do words hurt?
I forgot that 30-second rule. Like I said, words can hurt. Whether you may mean it as a joke, something may come out of your mouth just as a jerk, or as a joke. Like I said, I may call you an idiot, or I may call you something that to me is just common vernacular, but to someone else it may hurt.
Calling somebody stupid.
Yeah, calling someone stupid, calling someone an idiot, calling someone stupid. Those words may hurt someone because you don't know their mindset at the time you're talking to them, at the time you're saying that to them.
If they don't have a high confidence level.
Yeah, exactly.
Like us, we've been around and, police officer too for 30 years.
Yeah, exactly. You've been
And
called,
I grew up in North Jersey, so.
You've been called every word in the book, But do you think that criminal that was calling you those words, do you think that criminal actually thought those words, or was it just coming off the top of his head, or do you?
Oh no, I'm sure he was trying to hurt me.
Yeah,
Well, there's two. So
Absolutely.
That's my portion of it. There's two different types when you use harmful words. There's two places that it comes from, and it all has to do with intent. All right, there's those people who grew up that way. Where I grew up, the section of New Jersey where I grew up, we were all different races, but we called each other those races. We did.
Absolutely.
We called each other those races, but there was no intent behind it. It was like, I'll call you this, but nobody else can call you this. And then there's the people who do it to hurt you, that criminal you were talking about. Or if somebody is trying their best to get a rise out of somebody, they may use inflammatory vocabulary in order to evoke some sort of emotion.
Get under your skin.
A little bit of a bully.
Yeah.
Right. And more times than not, it works. It works. But you're also doing it here. In all fairness, when people do that, they're doing it to people who they know can defend themselves.
At least you hope so.
I used to call it all the time. I'm half Italian, so I got to say it. You're getting my guinea up.
Mm.
But if someone called you a guinea, or called me a guinea, I'd be pissed off. But it's getting my guinea up, which means I'm about to get fucking pissed off.
My favorite
I
was
grew up in Pollock Valley. Across the street was Guinea Heights.
now my uncle.
We had all those sections: Mick Hill, Guinea Heights.
One of my uncles grew up in the Polish section in Brooklyn, and he married a Polish girl. He's an Irish guy. He used to go. He liked to fight though. He used to go into the bar.
Imagine that.
Go figure.
He used to go into the bar and tell Polish jokes until somebody fought him. And that's an example.
Sounds like where I grew up.
That's an example of somebody using that inflammatory vocabulary.
Goads him into it.
Well, there's only one Polish joke. The rest are true. I'm sorry for all the Polish. It's a joke.
I'm gonna get Diana in here. Diana's gonna kick your ass.
Not the first time I got my ass kicked in the studio.
And we have a good friend who was actually born in Poland, and she took it kind of rough in here. So this episode has been a year and a half in planning, and the funny thing is, I had the original outline that I drew up for when we first proposed you to come in, and although it's very similar, a lot of stuff has changed in here because we've learned a thing or two about where the direction of the show we need to go in order to change people's minds, which is kind of what we're going to do here. We're going to open some people's eyes.
But you know what, Kevin? I mean, it comes down to hurtful words. That there are certain things in Special Olympics because, obviously Todd's involved in the Special Olympics community and so am I. But you're not as involved as we are, and we know the hurtful words and the catchphrases that we really can't say. When we were prepping for this show, we went through a whole thing about you can say this, you can't say that, you can't say this.
Well, let's get that out there. We all know the big word, and we're not going to say it because we're not going to give credence to that word, but it's the R word as it relates to children with special needs across the board, not just athletes. And it also was a nice little segue from our social media question. That word, it's my understanding, is as bad as any racial term out there, inflammatory term, and I think it kind of goes back to a lot of the special needs kids may not have the mental acuity to A, understand that somebody is saying that, or B, the fortitude to fight back. Would that be a fair statement, or do they know?
Oh, they know.
They know.
Once that word is said in front of Special Olympics people, I mean,
they know when people are being talking down to them or derogative or absolutely.
Well, that word, what kind of weight in the community does that word hold? Is it fighting words?
Oh, it's definitely fighting words.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the word itself is just, slowed down.
Yeah. I mean,
And
it's in a
it's like-
dictionary.
Yeah, it's
You
like
know,
every
it-
other word that,
yeah.
got
It's-
twisted and bastardized and
Slow growth. Yeah, slow growth, but they changed it to mean slow growth, but a lot of ways the special needs kids are above everybody else. In a lot of ways.
absolutely.
They love better.
Without doubt. 100%.
Well, what I tell people, they never learn racism, they never learn hatred.
Yeah.
They're always happy, they're always cared for. So who got screwed?
So who should the R word apply to? It's probably us.
Everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably
I mean,
us.
growing up, we used that on each other.
Well, there's another one.
Without doubt.
There's another one as it pertains to Down syndrome kids, and I use this term because one of my cousins has Down syndrome. They were mongoloids, and that was
Yes.
the accepted term, and there was nothing. There was no hatred behind it. There was no, and it
There's no ill will.
no, and the R word was the same thing. There was no ill will behind it, but that word, it's an ugly word. Really, I don't even know where that word came from.
I don't even know what it means.
I always thought it meant like a Mongol from like Genghis Khan and stuff. That's what I thought it was when I was a kid because I heard it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what are some other? Are there any other terms that are as visceral as that one?
No, that's pretty.
I was going to, if you call someone like a Kevin Donaldson, then, I mean, that
hurts.
hurts. That hurts. I mean, nobody ever better call me Kevin.
It would up your status. That's what it would do. You can't call a Labrador a French poodle; it might get offended. But so they know that makes that word worse if they know.
They're very cognizant of everything.
And
They really are. They take in so much. You don't think they're taking things in, but they're grasping everything that's going on around them.
My son, if we drive somewhere, we drive 6 months later, he goes, "That's so and so," or "This is," and you're an hour away.
Yeah.
Like they're smart.
What is your son specifically diagnosed? What's your son's name?
Jake.
So what's Jake specifically diagnosed with?
Down syndrome, and he has alopecia, which is no hair.
Lucky.
So that's another thing that
That kid just doesn't know how lucky he is.
Oh, I know.
The greatest line I ever heard was in Happy Days. The older brother, Chuck, comes down, and I forget who. I think he's talking to Richie, and he says, I used to think shaving was cool, but now it's just a drag.
It is.
It really is.
Listen, I wish I had alopecia. I hate hair. I shave my head just because I want it. I don't want to have it.
You don't have alopecia?
Hey, Todd, you're my friend. You're not supposed to laugh at his jokes. You laugh at my jokes, all right?
13% of all Downs have alopecia.
Oh, do they really?
Really?
It's an autoimmune disease.
Yeah.
I didn't know
I
that.
didn't know that.
Those are the things you learn as you go along.
My cousin Bobby, though, he was one of four. He was the youngest because my Aunt Ella had kids a little old.
Late in life.
A little late in life. I know the likelihood of that goes up. But out of his other three siblings, he's the only one left alive. And he's pretty old. Bobby's he's got to be early 60s, mid 60s.
That puts him up towards the record.
Yeah,
For New Jersey, I think
he's in Florida.
the one article I saw in the paper a couple years ago, she was 69. She was the oldest.
Yeah.
Downs
We
in New
we had a
Jersey.
guy growing up in North Arlington. We had a guy with Down syndrome, and the guy's name was Vinny Macaluso, and he was just accepted. He was just one of us. We didn't look down on him. We didn't talk bad about him. He was just one of us. And that's the way I was born and raised.
I don't know if this is good or bad, but one of the swim team members goes out drinking with our guys.
Vinny used to drink with us all the time.
No, what's that like?
Oh, it's fun. You know what? They're no different than us, though.
They're wise asses.
Oh, yeah.
If you actually look up the definition with Down syndrome, they're wise asses.
It's funny you say that because my cousin has absolutely the worst mouth I ever. And I haven't seen him in a long time. Don't get me wrong, but he had absolutely the worst mouth I ever heard on a human being. Every other word was F. Every other it was this. Like he didn't know how to formulate a sentence without those words.
So he grew up in North Jersey.
In Special Olympics all the time, we talk about inclusion. But with this guy Vinny that I was talking about, we included him back in the day before we knew what Special
inclusion
Olympics was
was,
all
yeah.
about. You know, we just included him into everything we did. You know, it was just, if we were going out, you know, we are going to go hang out one night. I mean, when we were teenagers, we weren't really going out drinking that much anyway.
Yeah.
You know, we'd go out. Tell him to shut up. We'd go out. We'd say, "Hey, Ben, come on, we're going." You know,
It's one of the boys.
we'd include him with us, and there was no sign. We never treated him indifferent.
I think growing up, the only kids that really got with any type of special needs were because we didn't know it was the autistic
I
kids.
don't remember much of autism when we were kids.
Well, you know what? When they were autistic back in the day too, or ADD and ADHD, you know, they were just the problem kids.
You know
Yeah.
you know how you know, and everybody grew up with them. There was that one kid growing up
that was off.
It was off.
Yeah.
That was the autistic kid. I could tell you exactly who it was growing up. He used to bring in cat skulls and stuff that he found out in the woods and nail them and paint them and stuff. But he was a brilliant mechanic.
Like, say those are
Yeah, they're
serial
traits of
killers.
serial killers. Yeah. But him and his brothers, I think they were all autistic because him and his brothers they made a bicycle. I know this by welding frames together that was at least 10 foot tall with the cranks. The one crank would go to another crank. They were amazing engineers.
But
if
we
you-
didn't know what autism was when we were growing up.
But if
No.
you
I
asked
don't,
never
I don't
heard
know if
that
there was no diagnosis for it back then.
But
No.
if you asked him what he, you know, the normal kids that would at 12 or 13 looking at girls and stuff, he had zero interest. He was just pulled back from society. And everybody growing up, especially people that are our age, knows that at least one person in their town that said, "Kid's he's a little off." But more than likely it was autism or Asperger's or something like that.
Yeah, the high end.
The high end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Todd, we talked a little bit about your son. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you?
Well, I want to put this out. Growing up in Garfield, across the street from me was a girl named Mary. She's probably early 20s. She had MS real bad. You know, arms all curled up. And
Was she a thalidomide baby?
No,
No.
just
Oh.
just the muscles are all
Oh, okay.
contracted, and you know, walked pigeon-toed and all that. And speech was bad. You know, pretty much nonverbal. And
She get
a
picked
lot
on.
of kids were brutal.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Brutal, and I
Kids are
hated
tough.
it. Absolutely hated it, and I think that's kind of early on what formed, you know, my opinions and what I thought. And
Now, when you found out that you had a son with special needs,
that was a bit of a shock.
did that old mindset did your mind change, or were you sort of going in that direction where you're accepting, no, these people are just like everybody else? And I hate calling them these people. That's the wrong terminology. But people with special needs are no different than anybody else. They just need a little extra attention in order
Yes.
to get back to normal.
Some things they're slower than others, and they reach their milestones later in life, like my son did. You know, he didn't talk until he was almost 5, and then he didn't shut up.
When you
I was
first,
gonna say, when you meet Jake, once you start talking to him, he doesn't shut up.
most interesting conversations in the world are people.
I've
with
actually
special
had better conversations with
Yeah,
him
right.
than some of the cops I used to work with. I hope they're listening.
Yeah. Now, when you first bring this beautiful little baby boy in, and at what age did you know something wasn't what you would see in everyday babies?
Everything from the day he was born.
Such
Did you
as-
know beforehand? Because I know they have all
No.
these different tests now that you could, you know,
So
when a woman's pregnant, you can take these different tests and see if your
See, it's Down
child has
syndrome
Down
markers,
syndrome.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's
Which is the most
which now they have to offer you. They didn't when we did it.
yeah.
which is the most stupid test in the world. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I've never met anybody who's had a Down syndrome child or child with Down syndrome who didn't love it more than a regular child. That it just, you know, the children are children. But never want, like, what say you were to find out that your wife was pregnant with a child with Down syndrome. What are you going to do?
Keep it.
Absolutely.
Listen, it's God's fate.
Absolutely.
It's God's fate. What are you gonna do?
So
You're not gonna abort a kid just because he
Well-
has Down syndrome.
That was the thing too. About 2 years after he was born, they now offer that test. There's like 13 things they can pick up, and they give you the option. And my wife and I both said that Even if they said he had Downs, we wouldn't have.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's against our religion, and you know, they're human beings. They're
Yeah.
God's children. They're God's special children.
And they're your child. It's your child.
Yeah.
You know, are you going to take your child's life out of the world before your child is even here just because he's got Down syndrome?
But that's why I think that test is stupid.
Yes.
I do. I think it's a stupid test.
You shouldn't give people the option.
Right. It's you're having the child. You created a child. It's your responsibility. You're having a child, and it's.
So say you had a atypical child, but he wasn't very bright.
Yeah.
Should he go because
Do
he's not?
they have
He's not as bright as
Do
you
they have
want him to be.
stupidity tests for kids? Listen, your kid's not going to grow up and be that smart. Do you want to get rid of him now?
He's not going to be a doctor. Sorry.
Exactly.
He's going to turn up to be a cop. No, get rid of him.
But with all the tests that they give prenatal now, I'm not surprised that they're not going to develop a test like that. They're going to have genetic markers. Okay, this one's going to be this, and this one's going to be this, and then you run into this situation where you get to play God and pick and choose. You know, if you're
Who comes into the world and who doesn't?
if you're looking for a perfect child, guess what?
They don't exist.
They don't exist. Yeah, I've talked to your father. He's got something different to say.
Hey, listen, God gave me gray hair. That's what I got.
God gave me no hair.
I'm not dyeing it. You're not growing it.
Now,
Todd, I thought you were my friend. I mean, come
See,
on.
this is what friends do, though.
we just had a whole episode on busting balls, and we're still reeling from it.
And listen, next time we have a Bustin' Balls episode, we should bring Todd in. Todd's one of the best at it.
You know, we grew up on a corner every night, and you were bored, and you just hacked into each other. No mothers, no sisters. We had
No,
rules.
but see, you.
Oh,
you,
well, see, mothers were not off. We
No.
could say anything we wanted about
that
mothers.
would be fights.
Yeah.
You got to realize something. Todd and I are both on the Special Olympics New Jersey Law Enforcement Torture on Committee, and that is a family in itself.
Yes.
And we do nothing but break each other's balls. I mean, I won't see Todd for 5-6 months. First thing we do, it's like, hey Todd, how are you? And next thing, it's straight into busting balls.
Oh, what did I say to one guy? Are you still alive?
Now, you get this baby that you identify as there's something not out of the ordinary with
Oh, it
it.
was a shock.
Yeah. And what was that conversation between you and your wife? Was Jake your first?
We had twins. Those were our first.
Okay. So Jake is a twin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other twin she's
She's going to play D1 ball.
going to D1 ball. Wow. That's a interesting little wrinkle. But yeah, you know what? I have seen that before. I have seen that. several
That's why
times
we
before.
haven't had Todd in here, because he's always involved with Jake in Special Olympics and with his daughter in.
Two of them. They're not. At least now they're on the same team. Thank God.
He's always coaching something and going. I have to go to this game and have to go to that
Well,
game.
they're elite travel, so
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
all
Oh,
over the
that's
country.
crazy.
What was that conversation like with your wife?
So she just gave birth, and the head of neonatal delivered them, and they worked 24 hours. So the next doctor came in. It was a female Indian, and she said, "I sent your son's blood out to be tested." And I'm like, "For what?" She goes, "For Down syndrome." What do you mean? Well, he has some of the things, the almond-shaped eyes, the simian crease in the hand, the tongue licking, the tongue thrusting. She goes, "A lot of babies do that, So 3 days we had to wait. That was a long 3 days.
I'm sure.
And I'm walking in with the two carriers to take the kids home, and the head of neonatal pulled me aside. He goes, "I need to talk to you too." And I knew right as soon as he said it. It's funny. I accepted it right there. It took my wife a little longer.
Did she go through any type of postpartum depression because of it?
Or just a woe was me.
No, not so much that, but it was also, they were preemies. They never slept at the same time, so it was like 24/7, so we were both so burnt out. And I actually took 2 months off. I prayed to go back to work.
Now,
Hey, Chief, could I come back tomorrow?
Yeah.
after the birth of your children, was it another discussion? Did you have any other children?
Yeah, we have a 15-year-old.
So you chose to do it again, going through possibly the same stressors. I don't know what the genetic markers are. Is if you have one Down syndrome child, is it a higher risk for another one?
No.
It's totally random.
I think it's like 25 million to 1 to have two with Downs, but we did meet a couple when I think they were like 3 or 4. We went to Point Pleasant to Jenkinson's and saw a young boy, probably about 15. And he was thin and muscular, which, you're used to Downs because of the slow thyroids that they're heavy set.
Mm.
And we're like, wow, that's great. Jake could be like this boy. And we see him going on rides and stuff. And then we see a little girl with Downs in a cart, whatever, stroller. But she was, like 6 or 7. So we're like, nah, they can't be together. And then the two walked up to each other. So we talked to them for a while. And they waited 8 years. And like I said, it's $25 million to 1.
Wow.
That's a
Better chance of hitting the lottery.
And she was this one was on a feeding tube for life because her stomach wasn't connected to her
But
esophagus.
Jake is fully functional.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
and
He's a jack little bastard.
what's up with
you? Got to see his son. His son is jacked. He's
And
a swimmer in Special Olympics, all that.
I know we're talking specifically about Down syndrome right now, but my cousin had this. He was the strongest individual. I mean, strong. Where he'd come in and we'd wrestle because
They used to say our strength.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
But he would come in and wrestle. He was a little bit older than me, but he would come in and wrestle, and it wasn't even a challenge for him. It really wasn't even a challenge, and he would laugh. I mean, laugh and call me every name in the book, but just is that I don't know if that's a marker of Down syndrome. I really don't.
I think a lot of it is they don't have, like in our minds, we don't want to hurt anybody.
Mm.
So we have those limitations. I think they lack some of those.
Okay.
Plus, it's like acceptance to them. They see everybody breaking chops, so they start breaking chops.
Oh, I love their personality.
Oh, it's fantastic. It is.
You cannot walk away from a child with Down syndrome without smiling. It's almost impossible.
So I go to
anybody with intellectual disabilities. I'm not we're not just going to put this on Down syndrome. Anybody with intellectual disabilities, you cannot walk away from one of those people without having a smile on your
even
face.
the nonverbals are little wise asses.
Yeah.
The autistic ones, because 50% of them are nonverbal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can see it in their eyes and their hand gestures, and they'll pull pranks on each other.
I imagine when you get together for the Special Olympics events, I imagine that's just a terror.
And you get to know all the other kids around the state too.
Yeah.
We have the largest swim team. I think it's like 34 swimmers.
Well, what do we have? 35,000 athletes in New Jersey.
Probably just under that now.
34,000.
About 35,000 athletes in New Jersey.
Well,
when I started, I think it was 8.
Yeah.
Well, how did you get Jake involved in sports? Was that just something that you were involved in as a kid, or did you see something in him that brought something out?
Well, he's competitive because his twin sister, she would bet you on who could get her pajama on faster or who could eat her cereal faster. Everything was a competition. And his coordination from when he was very young is like he could throw a ball straight.
Yeah.
And he's a trip.
See, and that's the thing right there. See, when Todd was just talking about his son, couldn't even get the words out and a smile came on his face. That's what's so special about Special Olympics.
Yeah.
I have long said that sports in general, for young people, there's something that it teaches them so far beyond the athletic act itself. It teaches them teamwork. It teaches them how to win.
Absolutely.
It teaches them how to lose. And that's on down the line.
It teaches them patience. It teaches them, and you don't think that with kids with disabilities, but you'd be amazed at, you do an 8-hour friggin' meet, and they're good all day long.
I can't even. My kids wrestled one year, and sitting through those wrestling matches was mind-numbing. Just 8 hours, and they're wrestling for 3 minutes.
See, I'm fortunate because with the swim, I help coach, and I do the medals presentation at the meets. So I'm busy all day. The parents up in those bleachers, it's got to be 30 degrees hotter up there.
Oh, yeah.
On one meet, I was
crazy.
up there. I'm like, I got to go outside. So God bless the parents that'll sit through that stuff.
Well, has having a child with special needs put a strain on your relationship with your wife at all? Any more so than having children in general?
No, but also my wife travels most of the time with my daughters because she was a D1 player, so she coaches them.
So that's where your kids get their athleticism.
Oh,
from.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely not
Yeah.
you.
If they want to steal cars or something, I can help them out.
I've seen you walk. You can't put one foot in front of the other sometimes.
But yeah, I think it's 85% of people with a child with a disability end up divorced.
Well,
I'm
it's
sure
a tough life.
I'm sure it's got to be
It
a
does.
strain. Yeah.
And Jake's high functioning. So,
Yeah, exactly.
if
I'm
you
going
have
to
a
say
child
one of the lower functioning people. It's got to be a
and we
strain.
deal with them all the time.
And we have a friend of the show, Derek.
Yes.
His son is nonverbal, and I know it puts a strain on him every day.
Oh, absolutely.
And he's a touring musician.
He's a touring musician, and he leaves his son home with not even his mother, with Derek's fiance, which
Does
is
he play with the Nerds?
No, he's
No.
not.
Because one of the guys from the Nerds, his son is autistic.
Don't ever eat the Pop-Tarts on stage, because I used to bounce for them when I was working in the club.
Nerds?
And I snuck one. They're jalapeno flavored Pop-Tarts. They're disgusting.
No,
Is it the singer?
no, a friend of ours is a guitar player from Overkill, thrash metal band. He's got a nonverbal son, and like Kevin said, he's a world traveling musician. And
His girlfriend is a saint.
his girlfriend isn't the birth mother of the child, and when he goes on tour,
She takes care of him.
she takes care of him.
God
And
bless her.
it's crazy.
And Derek he's got cerebral palsy. Young Derek. He's got cerebral palsy and he's got autism.
Yeah.
And he's
tough.
nonverbal.
The cerebral palsy is a lot of work.
Yeah.
Well, what is
And
Jake's
he just broke his hip too.
Yeah.
So if you're listening, Derek, get better, buddy.
what is Jake's mental age?
Well, I always joke he's got a bunch of things I don't have. He makes the honor roll, 6-pack abs, something else I can't say. You didn't get that from the Irish side.
Good for him. Good for him. See,
That's why
the Lord always makes up. There's
There's your
balance.
compensation.
There's balance.
compensation.
But if you were to guess, like where does he sit mentally as far as age group?
I don't know. It's tough to say. He
Yeah.
can read pretty well. His writing's decent. I've seen cops that have worse.
Doctors that have worse.
Read accident reports from the inner city, which
Yeah,
I used to have to do. It was awful.
Maybe 10 or 12.
So he's fairly high functioning
Yeah, on a
grand scale.
on a grand scale, he's very high functioning.
You said he's 18, and he's about to become an adult. Do you ever worry about having a physical adult with the mindset? Because I have a 12-year-old right now. It's about to turn 13, and they think they know everything.
Of course you are. You're bulletproof till you're about 25.
They think they know everything. Is that the case with him? Because
On some things,
there's
yes.
some things I want to put his head through the wall.
I'm not going to lie. He might be disabled. I still want to put his head through a wall.
Does he push it to the limits every once in a while?
Oh, absolutely. This weekend.
So
I thought his mother was going to kill him.
do you ever worry about having the body of an adult and the mind of a teenager, of a preteen?
Well, he's small, so that's the only saving grace.
Yeah.
If he was my size with his build, I couldn't take him.
Oh, yeah.
I'd have to hit him from behind.
Well,
I'm telling you, you got to see Jake. Jake is jacked up.
Oh, he
He
works
really
out
is.
twice a day.
that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, what shot does he have at? I mean, like my cousin has a job, and it's not a, he's not going to ever be a CEO of a corporation, but he's got a job that's fulfilling to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're usually very good at it.
Yeah.
So there's a story, a police story. I used to get coffee, and I hate Quick Check. I'm sorry, Quick Check, but I hate your coffee. All right, but the Quick Check hires people with special needs to work the coffee bar. And her name was Amy. Her dad was a retired Newark cop. And every time I go in there, she would always say, "What's new?" Like that's what she do. And she slurred, so it sounded like snow, but it was the cutest thing in the world to me. I would go in there to get my coffee there, even though I hated damn coffee.
Just to see her.
Just to see her, because she made my day brighter. Here's my thinking. She was probably making, at the time, $7, $8 an hour. She dressed herself, showed up for work on time. Here we are, police officers making $100,000 a year. And there are days we go to work miserable. And I used to tell the guys in the station this.
Bitching, moaning.
Yeah.
Oh, my God, I can't believe I got to go. I'm, do it. and she couldn't be happier.
They look forward to it.
Getting up and going to work.
It was her purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, and she
My son
loved
loves
it.
going to school. I'm like, that's not much help.
You know, I
That's
say that
definitely
all
your mother.
I say that all the time. I mean, you see the outlook on these, you know, these Special Olympics athletes, and sometimes you wake up in the morning. Sometimes you're like, I don't feel like doing it. They look forward to every moment of every day. I mean, it's unbelievable.
But that definitely hurt him during. The
during
pandemic.
COVID, or during the pandemic, yeah.
No COVID.
That perspective,
I'm learning. It's my first day here.
that perspective meant a lot to me. And people in the station were kind of cruel. The people in my headquarters were a little cruel, like, you're just going to laugh. I'm like, no, I'm envious of her. Like, I am so envious of her because she is thrilled to do her job, and there's days I don't want to even come to work.
But is that like a shallow personality type person? You know, that looks down on these people.
Well, you saw it. You see it from cops when
See
they
it all the
start till
time.
they finish.
Yeah.
You get jaded after all those years, and you know it just. I don't know.
But I say, you know, I'll never forget it. 1996, the winter of '96. I had just gotten out of the academy. I was working.
Snowstorm.
Yeah, I was no.
Blizzard.
Yeah, oh yeah. I went through the academy in that blizzard. That winter, they came up to me and said, "We're having the local winter games up at Camp Go Mountain. Do you want to go up and give medals out? You know, the local, Special Olympics games. Do you want to give medals out?" To me, I'm like, it's a day out of the office. Let's go. The first time I put a medal on a Special Olympics athlete, and we call it in Special Olympics, you're hooked.
Yeah.
First time I put a medal on a kid, I said, that's it. I'm hooked. I am hooked, and I volunteer for everything.
Well, we always said
I-
that if you take somebody to opening ceremonies
Forget it.
and they don't cry, something wrong with them.
Cry every time. The
Yeah,
summer games opening ceremonies down at College in New Jersey,
It is the most
heart-wrenching.
fulfilling.
Oh.
So we go on the football field and we do 2 lines, and they bring each county in one at a time. And they come-
Generally with an honor guard in front of them,
and the
Rutgers football players.
Yep, and the
and then
Boy
the count,
Scouts.
then each count, yeah,
Yep.
and then the counties.
And they come in between you and they just high five you, they hug you. The coaches that are with them thank you, and you'll see guys just turn around, wipe their eyes, turn back.
Oh yeah,
You can't walk away not touched.
So there's a topic that I want to get into because there was a movie made about the Special Olympics,
Which one?
The Ringer.
It's a great movie.
Okay.
funny movie.
So
That's
I'm
when
sitting-
my third daughter was born.
I'm sitting back watching this and I'm laughing. And I had no idea the Special Olympics endorsed this. I found out from Mike afterwards.
I met the kid, the one guy.
Oh, did you?
Oh, he was
Jimmy?
funny. The roommate. Don't touch my stuff.
That's him. That's when the fuck did we get ice cream? That kid.
Yes.
That kid. So that was an ad lib. That was him, and he was on Jackass a couple times. Like he was in a couple of the movies. Aged very quickly, but he was in a couple of movies. That kid, brilliant. I would love to get that kid in here.
That's his personality, what you saw.
It-
That's
it-
not acting.
It took me a long time to watch that movie because I thought it was anti-Special Olympics until I heard that it was endorsed by Special
No,
You
Olympics.
scratched
That's why
my
Then-
CD.
Then
he's only about this big.
You picked it up and you,
And you
scratched it.
when
But
the fuck did we get ice cream?
so that movie, I felt very guilty about watching it in the beginning until I found out, like Mike said, Special Olympics did endorse it. But that movie, if you look at that movie and you take a step back from the comedy that's in it, it actually is doing what Special Olympics was set out to do. It's their mission is to change people's minds that these are athletes. These guys work hard. Like, this is no joke. You had an able-bodied person in Johnny Knoxville racing against people with special needs, and he was losing.
Yeah.
And he was a high school star.
Right, and that's the bottom line. And then Jimmy comes out
Well,
and he just cracks me up.
Mike's been in national games.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I've been offered to go, but I've never gone because of having a special needs kid to leave my wife for 15 days.
It
was
it
not
is one
happening.
of the greatest experiences of my life.
But those are the top athletes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'd put them against half the college athletes.
Well, you know what I say all the time too. The will, I don't want to say the will to win, but the effort that
It is the will.
these athletes put in there. If everybody in the United States put that effort into their job every day, we'd have a perfect country.
I'd like you guys to come one time to swim practice. There's a kid, Adam, has MS, and he basically has the use of both arms, but in the pool he can only use one, and it's 2 laps to warm up. He does his 2 laps. He pulls himself down, up and down with just one arm, facing the water. I actually, in the first year or so, I just stared at him because I'm waiting for him to drown. And the happiest kid in the world you'll ever meet. He has got more heart than anybody I've ever met in my life.
It's all about. So the whole reason we started this show is to talk about overcoming adversity, and that's adversity. And
Yeah.
guess what? It's only adversity if you think it's adversity.
If you think something's against you, something's building up against you, you're going to use that, against you. These athletes don't know the adversity that they're going through.
So
They're never taught any better. Like you said, I mean, there's no racism in them.
No.
There's no hate in them. They
because
treat
that has
everybody
that has to be taught.
exactly. I say it all the time. Racism is a learned,
Learned
behavior.
yes.
You look at a dog with 3 legs. Look at a dog with 3 legs. That dog will play. That dog will love you. Because that dog doesn't know. That dog doesn't know that anything is different in them at all. They just know they're a dog. That's the only thing they know. So if these kids, they just know what they know, and they're happy about it.
Well, my son, we used to ask him, do you know what Down syndrome is? He was 12, 13 years old.
That's a tough question.
And he would go, it's because I'm bald. Like, okay.
And apparently,
Okay, what's for lunch?
Teach him that Down syndrome means he's very gifted down in the other areas.
Well, I do that once in a while. I go, look at that guy, he's got Downs.
As long as he doesn't have ups.
Hey,
Well, that was his, he had his own little clothing line, Down with Jake.
Really?
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Had his own emblem and stuff. And
He's taking it back. He should take the R word back.
Does he still have the
yeah, there's a website still out there.
Oh, Down with Jake.
Down with Jake. Let's go. Let's blow that one up.
Downwithjake.com.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Now, getting back to the ringer.
Hey Drew, could we get a perfect, thank you. We're gonna put it up on our website.
Okay.
Getting back to the ringer for a second. In the Special Olympics community, how in general was that movie received?
Oh, everybody loved it.
Yeah.
Because it didn't portray Special Olympics in a bad light.
No, and not at all.
It gave us a lot of exposure.
I think the uncle
Yeah,
was
the
what
uncle
was
there, yeah.
wrong.
With society.
It's
Yeah, exactly.
an
Yes.
important part to play, and that guy, I forget his name, but he's a very good actor. That's an important part to play
He was
because
in Super Troopers, too.
yeah, he was in Super Troopers. He was in Wolverine.
Yes.
That part there is, if you break that apart, it's you have Johnny Knoxville, who's like the average guy who could take or leave Special Olympics. Then you have the other guy that's looking to capitalize on something. It's kind of what's wrong with society. And then you have these guys that are just they're what's good in life, and you sort of change minds. And that's I was interested in that and how the general population of people involved in Special Olympics took that.
So when we do the summer games at college in New Jersey, our swim team has its own floor in the dorms because we're so big. So the common area, the mothers load up with food and drink, and they just have they look forward to summer games so much because they're in each other's rooms. As a chaperone, I'm pulling boys out of girls' rooms.
But you know what it is? I mean, being part of Special Olympics, and you know this, we all look forward to that.
Yes.
It's the camaraderie.
Yes.
It's
Pulling
the fun.
boys out of girls' rooms?
No, I'm just saying.
Man.
The
just,
cops getting together, the cops with the athletes, the cops, the parents, and you know it, and you probably have your own, is there's always one kid that adopts you.
Oh yeah, without doubt.
And you become very close to their family.
And that's the thing too. There's one that adopts us. We don't adopt them.
No, they adopt you.
They adopt you.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, look at Eric.
Yeah.
Eric is like the poster. I hate to say poster child. He's the poster child for like the polar bear plunge.
Yes.
And he knows everybody, and he remembers your name. He'll come running. We go down to Seaside and I want to get into all the polar bear plunges and all the different things that we do for Special Olympics, but he'll be walking down a boardwalk. He's like a movie star walking down a boardwalk in Seaside.
Yeah, everybody knows him.
Everybody knows him.
That's how my son is.
Yeah, Jake too.
That's why we
yeah.
call him the mayor.
Moving forward in Jake's life, is there, I know somebody was trying to put out a law stating that two people with special needs cannot marry, they cannot procreate. There was somebody trying to do that some time ago. Do you ever worry about that for your son?
So I guess God had his own little plan. 99.9% of all Down males are sterile.
Mm.
And I was always like, that would be my kid. It'd be the one. But he's had a girlfriend for 3 years.
Yeah. Because I know that there was actually a group of people. It was people with special needs. There was little people weren't going to be able to procreate when there's proof that just because you're a little person doesn't mean you have a little person child. There's a higher likelihood, but it's not definite. And because I used to go to church when I was a little kid, and there was a child, he was a man with Down syndrome, and he got married. He got married to another person with Down syndrome. I don't think that they ever had children, but I always wondered about that because I read that a few years ago, and it was a little disgusting to me. Like, hey, listen, let them do what they want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's to say they can't?
Look, there's a lot of people I follow on
Human
Instagram.
beings. They're human beings, just
Absolutely.
like everybody else.
They probably and
And we go again. So you're a doctor. You get to choose, but the guy that's a little slower can't have what you have because he's not as smart as you. Or
but if you say Jake has the mentality of a 12-year-old, that's where
Well-
I think the waters get a little muddied. Hey, listen, if I was 12 years old and I could have gotten laid, I would have been like, hell yeah, hell yeah.
You're almost 50 and you're still not getting laid.
I did twice.
It worked twice. There's people I follow on Instagram that are people with Down syndrome, high functioning, Down syndrome people, and you see these athletes. There's one girl, and I'm remiss because I can't remember her name, but I mean, she's like a 40-time national champion.
with the glasses.
Yeah, in gymnastics.
If that's the same one, she's an ambassador.
Oh,
She
yeah.
travels all over the world for Special Olympics.
And that's the other thing too.
Gives
We
speeches
have ambassadors. We have Bobby Fredericks.
Yep.
We have ambassadors, Special Olympics that are Special Olympics athletes that go all over and talk to different people about Special Olympics, and it's so heartwarming to see these people.
Yeah. So Jake might have the learning capacity, or not even that, but maybe just reading and writing, but he can take care of himself.
Yeah.
You know.
Because I think that's every parent's every parent of a child with special need, their worst nightmare. I could see it as, I know Derek, our friend, says it that one day he's going to be shuffling off this mortal coil, and then is my child going to be able to take care of themselves? Because you don't want that child to be put in a home or a group home or something.
Not.
But one day you're not going to be here.
Oh, I had Jake late in life. I was 42 when he was born.
Right. So now, is that ever a concern for you, or you
All
just
the time.
Yeah.
I think about it all the time.
And is there a plan in place? Like, I don't even know what happens. I know my cousin he spent the last several years it's a facility. It's from what
Like
I
a group
understand.
home.
Yeah, it's a group home. I hate to call it a group home, but it's a facility.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
But because it's a really nice one. It's
Oh,
really,
no,
really nice.
absolutely.
But do you have to set aside certain funding for that, or does the state take them in? I don't even know how that works.
The state will take them in, but the only thing with that is they only have to provide a roof, clothing, and food. So, like when Jake turns 18, we have to set up a special needs trust.
Mm.
Because if he has any money in his name, it knocks him out of like Social Security and
They do that with elderly too.
yeah.
If
So
you
if-
get the last 5 years, you to get away all your assets.
So if my father-in-law passes away and gives 50 grand to him, thinking he's doing a good thing, he loses his Medicaid.
Oh.
So if it's in the trust, even if he's in a group home, if he wants to go to a Yankee game, he can take the money out.
Hmm.
If
Okay.
he wants to buy, 10 pair of sneakers one day, he can. State doesn't have to provide that. They
Okay.
just have to provide him with one pair.
So that's nice because I worry about my children now being able to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And
I worry about myself trying to take care of myself now.
There's a lot of special needs my kids have, but they're not the same special needs that
They're not registered.
They're not registered at all. Maybe they should be. Maybe they should be.
But even, I said to somebody, we'll just leave the money to our daughters and they can take care of them. And they said, what if your daughter gets divorced? She loses half to the husband. So the special needs, they can be executors of it and then, dictate where the money goes.
Because that's got to be an honest, real threat for you moving forward with him down his career. Because eventually, well, you had said, I think you were telling me that some of the athletes who go into these Special Olympics events are older than you.
Oh yeah, like I said, we call them kids all the time, but they're not kids. There are kids. But
one of Jake's teammates passed away 2 or 3 years ago. He was 64.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm 59, and I was probably.
I'm not 55. The oldest person in the room.
So
I still have hair.
Your son.
See, here you go, God.
Your son, as it pertains to competing, what do you think the biggest joy he's ever gotten out of competing?
I gave him his first medal.
Yeah.
Oh, he likes to win. That's for.
You know what?
He likes to please people.
Well, and that gets me to the motto of Special Olympics. Let me win. But if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt.
Yeah.
They want to win.
Oh, God.
Don't get me wrong, they want to win. But they're just as, if they come in second, they're just as happy.
Yeah.
Congratulating the first place guy.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's unbelievable. The camaraderie in Special Olympics, the bond that those athletes have together.
It is very special.
It really is. And that's why they call it Special Olympics, because it is special.
Now, there are several times, because this I found is universal with children. He gets you pissed off from time to time, doesn't he?
Oh, hell yeah. Friday night.
I
thought his Italian mother was going to take him out.
Dad, can I take the car tonight? Shut up, Jake.
That's funny. He knows he's not going to be able to drive.
I was going to say that at 17, everybody else is getting their license.
When you're 10 years old going, yeah, Jake, when you're 21, you can drive.
You ever let him get behind the wheel?
No.
Come on.
I've had him on the quad, and I take him on a motorcycle all the time. Loves that.
It's that self. You always hope people don't become self-aware, but you know that they are.
Even if he could drive, sometimes their decision making is poor.
Mm-hmm.
Or
because they could get distracted too. They'll be sitting there going, "Hey."
It's they might. I don't know if he would just drive through a red light, not seeing it, or not knowing what it's supposed to be, or not caring. Or...
Maybe looking at his dashboard lights.
Yeah. Oh, squirrel. Which is me.
Yeah, but my wife does that too. This is like red, blue, 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 blue. Yeah, it's very easily distracted. That's a interesting thing. So is he looking at some sort of job? What's he doing to move forward?
Well, the thing right now is he's, I want to be a police officer like you. And I'm like, you can't, not till you're 21 and you're going to talk to the chief for me. And yeah.
Well, are you 17? Is he in high school or is he in a specialized school? Or?
No, he's a senior.
Senior high school?
I got to be honest.
He's actually been on the varsity swim team for this is his 4th year.
Really?
He lettered freshman year. He got his varsity letter before his sister. She was softball in the spring.
I don't have any.
You have a varsity jacket and all that?
Oh, yeah.
Well, look at him.
From the little you've told me about Jake, I don't think I have any hesitancy in allowing him to become a police officer. Even if you were to tell me his true mental age, and I'm not saying his true mental age is 12, because have you seen some of the people they're hiring lately?
Hiring now? How about the ones I've worked with?
Right. I mean, you want to talk about bad decision making.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's what I always say. There's 44,000 cops in New Jersey, and not all of them I like.
Yeah. Maybe 20,000 will make the 20,000 make the cut.
There's 44,000 cops in New Jersey, and there's like 6 that I like.
It's sad.
I'm kidding.
Sad
when I get pulled over coming out of here,
they're not even taking civil service test.
No.
Yeah, that's going
Our
away.
department, I'm told, if you're female or of color, just walk in the front door.
Yeah.
And get an application.
Fill out the application.
I'm like, oh my God, that was.
Well, and that's another thing. Not to get away from Special Olympics, but nobody wants to be a cop anymore.
No.
So they're scrounging to get cops. You're going to get the lower barrel people that are going to want to be cops now.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a story for maybe you can come back next week and we'll talk about that.
When the mics aren't on.
So your son is sounds like an amazing young man,
He is.
and
Truly is.
that's the
And
luck.
yeah.
And don't. I know it's got to be tough for your daughter because I know your eyes are on him a lot.
Oh, absolutely.
And your
I mean,
daughter
she's-
might feel
she's-
neglected.
Beautiful girl, great athlete, great personality.
You're just like, oh, she'll take care of herself.
But,
Don't
you
worry
know,
about her.
Everybody comes up and, hey, Jake, and walks right past her.
But your daughter is like a mother figure to Jake too.
The younger one is.
Yeah, yeah,
Not his twin.
yeah.
Yeah, but at some
It's-
point that's
it's-
going to change where she's going to wear that like a badge of pride.
Oh, absolutely.
I know
I mean,
she
she's very protective
Yeah,
of him.
very
but,
protective.
But, you know, they're also like me and my brother.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Don't hurt one of us, but we'll hurt each other.
Exactly.
And he was a cop, too. We actually fought in uniform.
oh wow. So is there any?
Again, maybe come back next week and we'll talk about that.
It was off duty.
So is there
And
any plugs you want to throw out? Anybody where you want to lead our audience to?
If anybody wants to be a volunteer,
SON.
sonj.org.
Yep.
It's a great website. It has events, volunteers, and there's a lot of volunteers.
Oh.
Although the pandemic, I guess, did
Yeah.
a job on it because they were looking for volunteers for the golf outing, which we never had to do.
Yeah.
I think that'll come around again.
Summer games, there's hundreds of volunteers.
I mean, there are so many different things too. You got njletr.org. You know, the New Jersey Law Enforcement Torch Run.
well, that's within
Yeah.
SONJ too.
That's all within, you know, SONJ. But if
is-
anybody wants to get involved in Special Olympics, it is a life-changing thing. It
Yes.
really is. Like I said, we have the summer games. We have the opening ceremonies for the summer games, which is a must-see event.
It's a 3-day event.
We have winter games. We haven't had it, but we had the plane pull in Newark Airport.
That was a lot of fun.
That's always a lot of fun. Me and you always used to team up on the runway, pulling the planes back. And
Yeah, I lose my voice every year.
we have 3 polar bear plunges a year.
Lincoln Tunnel Challenge.
The Lincoln Tunnel Challenge. We have the 3 polar bear plunges. We have one in the turkey plunge. We have in November.
Thanks for giving plunge.
Thanks for giving. It's in Asbury Park. In January, we have Wildwood. And in February, we have Seaside Heights.
Which gets about 48,000 people showing.
Yeah.
Oh, we raised $2 million in one day. I mean,
That's
it's,
friggin' amazing. 32 cops raised $2 million.
Yeah, the Law Enforcement
Without-
Torch Run Committee
without
is
stealing
comprised of 32 cops.
It's not the hardest sell. In all honesty, it's not the hardest sell in the world. Now, our nonprofit Dental Development Project, we help first responders, and you go out and you just, hey, listen, first responders who are in need, going through a little bit of suffering, maybe a loss of life or something like that. Get people to try to give money to that. Now, how about giving money to special needs? Now, if you don't give money to that, you're a jackass.
You're a heartless bastard.
Exactly. So it's not that hard of a sell. So I believe those numbers. I really do.
Well, you know, it's funny too, because all you really have to, and we have, you know, we have the Red Robin stuff that we do with, you know,
We have our big events, and then every guy usually does a smaller event.
Yeah.
You know, I always did the comedy
He'll-
show.
Todd always did a comedy
Which,
show.
I mean, it was good for
That was a
$20,000,
lot.
$25,000 for the night.
He would run a comedy show and make $25,000 for Special Olympics in one night.
Well,
I mean, listen, there's a lot of work behind it. It's not one night, but one night
let
event.
me know when you run that. I got some people I can send your way.
Cool.
We're coming to the end of this thing here, and normally what I ask every guest is, "What has your suffering taught you?" But it sounds like other than having a teenager in the house, there really is no suffering. But I do want to know, what's your involvement, especially as it pertains to your son Jake? What has that taught you about life?
To appreciate it a lot more. To be forgiving.
Your skin is probably thick as hell.
Well, that started growing up in North Jersey.
and
then
being,
being a cop.
and being on the Torch Run Committee,
Yeah.
because we are ruthless.
No, see, that's how we show love. The more vicious you are.
You know,
Right.
me,
I
me,
tell people, if I don't like you, I'm not talking to you.
me and Kevin say it all the time. Me and Kevin bust each other's chops ruthlessly. It's because I care about Kevin. I'm not going to come out and say, Kev, I care about you. Kev, I love you.
So that would
But
be
But on, you know,
Queer, just like what Smitty called me. We had a guy over here who was suffering with sobriety, and I'm like, hey, Smitty, you know, we lost you for a while. I love you, and he goes, what are you talking about? Queer? Tell him me queer. I'm like,
But that's our generation.
that's a way we show our love and appreciation for each other, and that's what the Torture Committee is so special to me, because we're all a group of people that have the same mindset and have a common goal of Special Olympics and raising money. New Jersey is one of the only states, and correct me if I'm wrong, all of our athletes go to all of the events, whether it's summer games, winter games, everything.
There's no cost.
No cost
any
to
athlete
them or the family, because we raise so much money. This small state of New Jersey, the Law Enforcement Torture Committee of New Jersey, raises, what were we, like 5th in the world in
We're
fundraising?
number one for.
Yeah, we're number one for
12
years, but people finagle the money and they jumped ahead of us.
We won't mention states like Florida.
And Maryland.
Yeah.
Well, Todd, thank you so much for coming in today, and it means a lot to us. So
I'm glad I finally made it.
Yeah, no kidding.
Now, when we get you back for 2, it'll be another year and a half. So we'll talk about that.
He texted me the other day and said, "I know you're going to hate me, but can I still come in?" Absolutely.
Well, it's important to have conversations like this. It's important to open people's eyes. To people think, you know, sometimes people have a likelihood to see you with your situation with your son who has Down syndrome and say, "I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry." When I guarantee,
My own father.
really, I guarantee
he
you
goes,
turn
well,
around.
maybe they'll find a cure for it. I'm like, Dad, there's no cure for it.
I guarantee you snap right back at him and say, "Don't be sorry for me."
Hell no.
No, I'm actually.
I'm the fortunate one.
There's a lot of things about your relationship with your son that most people are very envy of, me included, on that one.
You'll never meet a parent that's mean. Even if they start out mean, after a few years, it humbles them. And they appreciate life more.
Like we talked about, Eric, the poster boy for the Seaside Plunge. His mother's one of the greatest people. She's the most happy-go-lucky person I've ever met.
And we went to her for his dad's funeral.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that's how
We become family.
their family, yeah.
We become family. One of my best friends is a kid, Justin Moreno. He's out of Hudson County. I know his parents very well. His parents, Alex and Hilda, and they accepted me like family. And I go to everything that Justin does. You know, they took me to a Red Bull soccer game just because, you know. And
But you had to go sit through soccer.
I know, it was torture.
That's on the next episode of the Suffering Podcast. It's sitting through a soccer game.
But I was with my little buddy Justin, you know, and we had a blast.
Yeah.
We really did.
Todd, thank you so much for coming in tonight.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Suffering Podcast. And it's all about special needs athletes. And it's, as always, let's think about all the stuff that we learned. Words hurt, especially when the intention is harmful. It's impossible to leave a conversation with a special needs person without a smile. It's only adversity if you believe it's adversity. And I'm going to repeat this one. Let me win. If I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Suffering Podcast. Don't forget to follow us on social media. Go to popple.com, put in TSP20 for a 20% discount. Follow the Suffering Podcast at the Suffering Podcast. Follow Mike at Mike_Failace, and follow me at Real Kevin Donaldson. And we're going to see you on the next episode of the Suffering Podcast.